I sat at my desk, the glare of my laptop screen scorching my eyes as I glanced at the medical bill in my inbox. My fingers hesitated over the keyboard, frozen, while my thoughts raced to catch up with what I was seeing. Sophie, my wife, had given birth 3 days ago, smack in the middle of my business trip to Chicago. The email had come through this morning, and it should have been the happiest news of my life. A baby. Our baby. I had been waiting for this moment for years, visualizing the family we would build together, the sweet laughs and tiny hands I'd come home to. But as I sat there, something gnawed at me, a quiet unease I couldn't shake. It wasn't joy filling my chest, it was doubt, heavy and cold, pressing down like a stone. For months, things had been off between Sophie and me. She had changed little by little in ways I couldn't quite pin down at first. She stopped looking me in the eye during dinner, her answers to my questions growing short and harsh. Whenever I attempted to hold her at night, she would move away, muttering about being sleepy or not feeling good. I chalked it up to pregnancy. Hormones, stress, all the things people say, but it wasn't just that. She stopped talking about our future, too. She no longer discussed the house we would buy one day or the travels we would take when the kid was older. It seemed like she had checked out of our marriage, and I had been too busy or too stupid to admit it. Then there was Eric, my younger brother, the golden boy. Charming, boisterous, the kind of person who could talk his way out of anything. Growing up, I had envied him occasionally. The way he sailed through life while I worked my ass off to keep things straight. Lately, though, he had been around too much. I'd come home from work and find him sprawled on our couch making jokes with Sophie, his arm slung over the backrest, a bit too close to her shoulders. She would giggle at his silly jokes, her eyes lighting up in a way they hadn't for me in months. I told myself it was nothing. Eric was family. Sophie was lonely, with me working, late so often. But now, staring at that hospital bill, the pieces started moving in my mind, and I didn't like the picture they were forming. I slapped my face with both hands, trying to drive the thoughts away. I had a kid now, a small baby, a girl? I didn't even know yet, because Sophie hadn't contacted me when it happened. She wrote, "Sure, the baby's here. We're fine." But no details, no excitement, no, "come home." That should have been my first red flag, but I had been buried in meetings, too engrossed to realize how frigid it sounded. Now, though, it hit me hard. I grabbed my coat from the back of my chair, the leather cracking as I pulled it on. Whatever was going on, I needed to see them, Sophie, the baby, my family. I'd figure out the rest later. The drive to the hospital was a blur, my hands tight on the steering wheel, my mind racing with questions I didn't want to ask. Was the baby okay? Was Sophie? Was there something she wasn't telling? Me? The hospital loomed ahead, a gloomy block against the dusk sky. I parked in a rush, nearly forgetting to lock the car. My hands were shoved into my pockets as I strode toward the entrance, my breath billowing in the frigid air. The receptionist gave me Sophie's room number with a bored nod, and I rode the elevator up. The hum of it did nothing to calm the tempest in my head. I told myself I was overreacting. Marriages go through hard times. Babies change things. Eric was just being Eric. Annoying, but harmless. By the time I stepped into the hallway, I had almost convinced myself everything was fine. Almost. The corridor smelled harsh, like bleach and medicine. My sneakers rattled. On the shiny floor, as I approached room 312, that's where she was, where my new life was waiting. I straightened my coat, squared my shoulders, and told myself to smile. I was a dad now. That's what mattered. But as I came closer, something stopped me in my tracks, a sound, faint but distinct, coming through the half-open door. Voices, familiar ones. My gut twisted. I slowed my steps, my heart thudding louder with every inch I moved forward. I didn't know it yet. But what I was about to hear would tear apart everything I thought I knew. It wasn't just a bill anymore, or a lousy feeling. It was the beginning of the end. "He's gorgeous," I remarked, my voice softer than I meant it to be. Sophie reached out, stroking my arm. "He is, isn't he? We did fine." "We." The words stung, but I nodded, forcing myself to keep up the charade. "Yeah, we did. I didn't look at Eric. Didn't want to see if he flinched. Instead, I asked, 'What's his name?' Sophie hesitated just for a beat, then said, 'We were thinking Jacob, after my dad.' I nodded again. 'Jacob. I like it.' Eric shifted, leaning against the wall. 'You should have seen her, Tom. She was a champ. Whole thing went easy.' He sounded proud, like he'd been some significant part of it, and it took everything in me not to clench my teeth. 'Wish I'd been here,' I said, staring at Sophie. 'Work. You know how it is.' She squeezed my arm. 'It's okay. You're here now.' Her touch felt like a lie, yet I let it rest there. Let her think she had me wrapped around her finger. I asked a few more questions, how she was feeling when they'd be discharged, keeping my tone light, interested. She answered like everything was normal, like we were just a happy couple starting a new chapter. The whole time, I watched them. Sophie's smiles, Eric's carefree laughter, the way they glided around each other like they'd done this 100 times. There was a rhythm to it, a familiarity I hadn't noticed before, and it made my stomach spin. How long had this been going on? How many evenings had I come home late, weary from work while they were here, conspiring, laughing, living off me? I kept my face neutral, nodded at the right times, chuckled when Eric made some foolish joke about diaper duty. They bought it. Hook, line, and sinker. Sophie even relaxed more, leaning back against the pillows, telling me about the nurses and how Jacob had wailed all night. When I eventually told them I had to go, Sophie pouted a little. "Already? You just got here." I shrugged, smiling. "Work's phoning. Gotta keep the bills paid, right?" Eric laughed at that, slapping me on the shoulder. "That's our Tom, always the responsible one." I wanted to shrug his hand off, but I didn't. "Someone's got to be," I replied, winking at him. He grinned, unaware. I kissed Sophie again, told her I'd be back tomorrow, and walked out, my steps quiet and even. The second I was in the hallway, my smile faded, and I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. They thought they'd won. They thought I was still their puppet, dancing to their tune. But I wasn't. Was the one tugging the strings now, and they'd never see it coming. For weeks, I kept the act up. Played the loving husband like it was my full-time job. Every morning, I kissed Sophie goodbye, urged her to call if she needed anything for her or Jacob, then went to work with a smile painted on my face. I'd come home with takeout, sit on the couch with her, ask about her day, how the baby was sleeping, if she was feeling well. She'd answer with that same pleasant tone, snuggling toward me like nothing had changed, while Jacob gurgled in his cot nearby. Eric would drop by sometime,